Welcome to Forbidden Love Story Channel, where secrets unravel and hearts collide. I'd always thought of myself as a steadfast wife, a nurturing mother, unyielding, like the kauri trees that tower over our little corner of New Zealand. My name is Sophie Bennett, 38, a woman who'd stitched her days into the gentle hum of life in Whangarei. The briny tang of the Northland coast was my steady heartbeat, whispering assurances of peace. But one scorching afternoon, as I draped fairy lights across our weathered veranda for my daughter Ava's 9th birthday, something inside me fractured. Jagged, raw, and fiercely alive. The sun blazed down, bathing the backyard in a molten glow, its light dancing off the distant harbour. I'd always cherished these moments, the flutter of excitement, the thrill of crafting something enchanted for Ava. My husband, James, 42 and perpetually swallowed by his engineering firm, left the weight of it on me. I didn't resent it, or so I convinced myself. The ladder beneath me creaked, an old relic I'd mastered balancing on, when a voice, deep, warm and startling, pierced the quiet. "Hi, Mrs. Bennett. Need some help up there?" The sound jolted me and I spun around, nearly tumbling from my perch. Below stood Noah, the 20-year-old son of my dearest friend Claire. His voice had matured since I'd last heard it, resonating through the sticky air like a low tide. I gripped the lights, my pulse thundering as I took him in, lean, bronzed, his sandy hair ruffled by the coastal wind. "Oh, Noah, thank you," I faltered, wrestling for composure as I climbed down. He moved closer, his steady hands bracing the ladder, and our fingers grazed. A brief, searing spark. A rush of heat flooded me, wild and uninvited, kindling something dormant beneath the surface of my orderly world. "Just got back from uni," he said, his green eyes flickering with a playful edge that twisted my insides. "Saw you up there and thought you might need a hand." His grin was effortless, unraveling, and I swallowed hard, guiding him to the veranda where decorations sprawled in disarray. "That's kind of you," I replied, my voice quivering with an emotion I couldn't pin down. We worked together, threading lights and pinning bunting, the air heavy with the scent of flax flowers and sea salt. Each accidental brush of his hand against mine sent a tremor racing through me. His movements were smooth, assured, captivating. My heart pounded, fierce and unruly, mocking the calm I tried to cling to. "How's university going?" I asked, grasping for the safety of small talk. My words felt brittle, teetering on a precipice I didn't dare name. "Pretty good, Mrs. Bennett," he said, smoothing a tablecloth with a grace that stole my breath. "The usual, study. Mates, a bit of chaos, but being back here, it's grounding, feels right." His gaze settled on me, warm and searching, and I laughed, a frail, jittery sound that hung between us. "I can imagine," I said, my voice snagging. "Ava's missed you. She mentions you all the time." "Only nice things, I hope." Noah's smile widened, and for a fleeting moment, the tension eased, melting into the wind. "Only the best," I assured him, our eyes meeting, quick, endless, intoxicating. In that instant, a wave of realization crashed over me. A mere touch, a passing smile, could unravel everything I'd locked away. Feelings I'd buried, vivid, perilous, exhilarating, stirred to life, clawing their way free. As the afternoon faded into dusk, shadows stretched long and languid across the grass. Guests began to arrive, neighbours, friends, Ava's schoolmates, the veranda humming with chatter and the clatter of plates. Yet beneath it all, that ember glowed, a quiet tether binding me to Noah. I glimpsed him through the crowd, his presence magnetic, tugging at me even as I tried to anchor myself in the party's chaos. It was lunacy, this sudden hunger. How could I... A woman who'd built her life around James and Ava, who'd prided herself on devotion, feel this? Noah was Claire's son, a boy I'd known since he was small, now a man whose nearness set my skin alight. I fussed with trays of lamingtons and juice, forcing steadiness into my shaking hands, but the echo of his touch lingered. Persistent, haunting, undeniable. The celebrations swirled on, a blur of laughter and light, but I was unmoored, swept into a tide I couldn't grasp. Something had shifted, split wide open, and I wasn't sure I could mend it. The New Zealand sun sank low, streaking the sky with crimson and gold, and I stood there, heart racing, wondering how deep this restless yearning might pull me. The party faded into a distant hum, but the spark Noah had ignited clung to me, persistent, smouldering, a wildfire threatening to consume the quiet life I'd so carefully tended. The days that followed were a blur of routine, packing Ava's lunches, nodding through James's distracted updates about work. But beneath it all, a restless current surged. Every time I stepped onto the veranda, the fairy lights we'd hung together shimmered like silent witnesses, whispering memories of Noah's touch. His voice, his gaze. It was madness, this pull, yet I couldn't douse it. Our paths crossed again a week later, unplanned yet inevitable, at the local farmer's market. The air buzzed with the scent of fresh kumara and the briny tang of the harbour, stalls spilling over with colour under a cloudless sky. I was sifting through a basket of feijoas, my fingers brushing their waxy skins, when I felt it. A prickle along my spine, a magnetic tug. I glanced up, and there he was, weaving through the crowd, his stride easy yet purposeful. My breath hitched, sharp and unsteady. "Sophie," he said, his voice low and warm, slicing through the market's clamour. He'd dropped the formal Mrs. Bennet, and the intimacy of my name on his lips sent a shiver racing through me. "Fancy seeing you here." "Noah," I managed, my voice a fragile thread. "Just picking up a few things for Ava." I clutched the feijoas tighter, as if they could anchor me against the tide swelling inside. "Mind if I join you?" His eyes glinted, mischievous and inviting, and before I could think, I nodded. We wandered the stalls together, the space between us crackling with unspoken tension. Our hands brushed as he reached for a jar of manuka honey, and the jolt was electric, sharp, delicious, forbidden. My heart thudded, a wild drumbeat I couldn't silence, and I caught myself stealing glances. His strong jaw, the way the sunlight caught in his hair, the effortless grace of his movements. We paused by a stall selling lavender soaps, the scent mingling with the salt air, and he turned to me, his gaze piercing. "You seem different today," he said, his tone soft yet probing. "Lighter, maybe." I laughed, a shaky, breathless sound. "Maybe it's the sunshine. Whangarei's good at fooling you into feeling alive." But it wasn't the sun. It was him, his nearness, the way he made the world sharper, brighter, more perilous. "Alive's a good way to feel," he replied, his smile slow and knowing. Our eyes locked, and the moment stretched, endless, dizzying, a thread pulling taut between us. I tore my gaze away, heat flooding my cheeks, and busied myself with a stack of woven baskets, but the ache lingered, fierce and unyielding. That encounter set the rhythm of our dance, accidental meetings that felt anything but. A chance hello at the library, where he lingered too long by the fiction shelves I browsed. A shared laugh at the beachfront cafe, the waves crashing in time with my racing pulse. Each time, the air thickened, charged with a longing I couldn't name but couldn't deny. Our conversations deepened, books we loved, dreams we harboured, the quiet frustrations of our lives. His words were thoughtful, his attention unwavering, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. One humid evening, as the sun dipped low over the harbour, painting the sky in fiery streaks, I found myself alone at the waterfront. James was buried in blueprints, Ava at a friend's, and the house had felt suffocating. I'd come to breathe, to escape, but fate, or something more reckless, had other plans. Noah appeared, strolling along the boardwalk, his silhouette framed against the dying light. My stomach twisted, a delicious knot of dread and desire. "Evening," "Sophie," he called, his voice a velvet caress. He closed the distance, and I smelled the faint cedar of his cologne mingling with the sea. "Out for a walk?" "Something like that," I replied, my voice trembling with a thrill I couldn't suppress. "Needed some air." "Mind company?" He didn't wait for an answer, falling into step beside me. We walked in silence at first, the lap of waves against the shore a steady pulse beneath our feet. Then he stopped, turning to face me, his expression raw, unguarded. "You ever feel like you're missing something, Sophie? Like life's passing you by?" The question struck me like a blow, peeling back layers I'd buried deep. "Sometimes," I whispered, my throat tight. "More than I'd admit." "Me too," he said, stepping closer. The space between us shrank, and I felt the heat of him, the pull of his nearness. "But with you, it's different. It's like I'm awake." His voice dropped, husky and urgent, and my knees weakened. "Noah," I breathed, but the protest died as his hand brushed mine. Deliberate this time, no accident to hide behind. His fingers lingered, warm and firm, and the world tilted. Before I could think, before guilt could claw me back, I leaned in, and our lips met. A soft, tentative collision that exploded into something deeper, fiercer. The kiss was a storm, hot, desperate, tasting of salt and longing. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, every nerve alight with a hunger I'd forgotten I could feel. When we broke apart, breathless and trembling, his eyes searched mine, dark with a passion that mirrored my own. "Sophie," he murmured, his voice a ragged plea. "I don't know how to stop this." "I don't either," I confessed, my heart a chaotic drumbeat of joy and terror. The harbour lights flickered in the distance, the night wrapping us in its embrace, and I knew we'd crossed a line, dangerous, exhilarating, irreversible. Guilt gnawed at me, a shadow lurking beneath the blaze, but it couldn't douse the fire. Noah was Claire's son, a piece of my past, yet here he was, rewriting my present with every glance, every touch. We parted that night with a promise to meet again, a secret woven into the Whangarei dusk. Each encounter after deepened the tether, stolen moments in the park, whispered words under the stars, kisses that burned hotter with every press. I tried to retreat, to cling to the life I'd built with James and Ava, but the pull was relentless. Noah had awakened something wild within me, a craving I couldn't bury, and with every step, I sank deeper into a territory both thrilling and treacherous, where love and betrayal tangled in a dance I couldn't escape. The days after that kiss by the harbour unfurled like a fever dream, restless, intoxicating, a haze of longing I couldn't shake. Noah's presence haunted me, his voice echoing in the quiet corners of my mind, his touch a phantom heat on my skin. I moved through my life with James and Ava like a ghost, folding laundry, stirring soup, smiling at their chatter, but beneath the surface a tempest raged. Every glance at the veranda lights, every whiff of cedar on the breeze, dragged me back to him, to the fire we'd kindled, reckless and alive. I tried to smother it. I buried myself in mundane tasks, scrubbing the kitchen bench, pruning the flax bushes, praying the rhythm of normalcy would drown the ache. But it pulsed stronger, a relentless tide eroding the walls I'd built around my heart. James, absorbed in his blueprints, barely noticed my distraction. His kisses perfunctory, his words clipped. Ava's laughter filled the house, bright and innocent, yet it only sharpened the guilt gnawing at my edges. How could I, a woman who'd vowed fidelity, who'd cradled this family like a treasure, let this desire consume me? It was a stifling afternoon, the air thick with humidity and the distant rumble of a summer storm when the thread snapped. My laptop froze mid-email, its screen a mocking blur, and frustration surged, hot, impatient, a mirror to the chaos within. Then I remembered, Noah had once mentioned in that easy way of his how he could fix anything technical. Before reason could tether me, my fingers found his number, trembling as I dialed. The phone rang once, twice, and his voice spilled through, warm, immediate, a lifeline I didn't deserve. "Sophie, hey, what's up?" "Noah, I hate to bother you," I began, my voice a tight wire, "but my laptop's acting up. You said you're good with this stuff. Could you help?" The words felt flimsy, a thin excuse, but my pulse raced with a thrill I couldn't suppress. "Of course, I'll be there soon." No hesitation, just that steady certainty that unraveled me further. When he arrived, the air shifted, charged, heavy, as if the storm brewing outside had slipped through the door with him. He stood in the entryway, his shirt clinging faintly to his frame from the muggy heat, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "Hey," he said, soft and low, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "Hey," I echoed, my voice a whisper as I led him to the living room. James was at the office, Ava at a friend's, the house eerily silent save for the hum of anticipation between us. He settled at the coffee table, the laptop glowing under his deft hands, and I hovered nearby, too close, too aware. Our shoulders brushed as I leaned in to point at the screen, and the contact was a spark, sharp, electric, igniting the air. My skin flushed, a wildfire spreading from that single point, and I saw his jaw tighten, his focus falter. "Just a few tweaks," he murmured, his voice rough, his fingers pausing over the keys. Our faces were inches apart, the space between us a shrinking void, and I caught the scent of him. Cedar, salt, something primal. My heart hammered, loud and defiant, drowning out the distant thunder. His eyes flicked to mine, dark and searching, and I knew retreat was impossible. "Noah," I breathed, but the word dissolved as he turned, closing the gap. Our lips met, a gentle collision that erupted into a blaze, fierce and unrestrained. The kiss deepened, hungry and urgent, a torrent of suppressed longing breaking free. His hands slid to my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, every nerve alight with a need I couldn't name. My fingers tangled in his hair, soft and wild, and I tasted the salt of the sea on his lips, the desperation in his breath. The laptop forgotten, we stumbled to the couch, the world narrowing to the heat of his touch, the press of his body against mine. His hands roamed, careful yet bold, slipping under my blouse, tracing the curve of my spine. I shivered, a delicious tremor that rippled through me and tugged the fabric over my head, casting it aside. His eyes widened, dark with awe and desire, and he whispered, "Sophie, you're breathtaking," his voice trembling with a reverence that pierced me. I pulled him back to me, our lips crashing together again, fiercer now, a dance of passion and surrender. His shirt joined mine on the floor, and I felt the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart against my chest. Our breaths mingled, ragged and hot, and I lost myself in the rhythm of us, every kiss, every caress a confession of the fire we'd tried to deny. His hands were tender, worshipping, igniting shivers that raced across my flesh, and I arched into him, craving more, needing all of him. The storm outside roared closer, rain lashing the windows, but it was nothing compared to the tempest within. Our bodies pressed together, a fusion of want and wonder, and I felt him, strong, attentive, every movement laced with love. The world faded, James, Ava, the life I'd known, replaced by this moment, this man, this undeniable truth. My hands gripped his shoulders, anchoring me as waves of sensation crashed over me, each touch a spark, each kiss a vow. We moved as one, lost in a tide of passion that consumed us entirely, until time dissolved, and all that remained was the exquisite blaze of our union. When it ended, we lay tangled on the couch, breathless and spent, the rain a soft drumbeat against the silence. His arms encircled me, warm and steady, and I rested my head on his chest, listening to the slowing thud of his heart. The euphoria was overwhelming, radiant, intoxicating, but beneath it, a shadow stirred. I traced the lines of his face, memorizing the softness in his eyes, the curve of his lips, and felt my chest tighten with a mix of joy and dread. "Noah," I whispered, my voice fragile. We can't keep doing this. The words clawed at me, a plea to myself as much as to him, but they felt hollow against the truth pulsing between us. I know, he replied, his gaze dropping, his voice thick with regret. I'm sorry, Sophie. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, tender and aching, and the weight of it nearly broke me. We disentangled in silence, retrieving our clothes, the air heavy with what we'd done. He fixed the laptop, quick, mechanical, a stark contrast to the intimacy we'd shared. And then he was gone, slipping out into the storm. The door clicked shut, and I leaned against it, my knees trembling, my mind a whirlwind of bliss and torment. Every touch, every kiss had seared itself into my soul, indelible and vivid, and I knew this wasn't the end. The rain streaked the windows like tears, mirroring the chaos within, and I stood there, caught between the ecstasy of Noah and the life I'd betrayed, a woman unmoored by her own desires. The veranda lights flickered outside, casting their glow into the dim room, and I sank to the floor, my breath hitching. I'd crossed a threshold, dangerous, radiant, irreversible, and the storm we'd unleashed was far from over. Noah's whispered words lingered, a promise and a plea, and I felt them settle into my bones, a fire I couldn't extinguish, a love I couldn't unfeel. The guilt was a blade, sharp and cold, but the memory of his touch was a flame, fierce and unyielding, and I knew with a certainty that terrified me that I'd never be the same. The echo of Noah's departure lingered in the house like a ghost. His scent of cedar on the couch, the warmth of his touch still tingling on my skin, the rain's soft patter a mournful chorus to my unraveling. That afternoon with him had been a blaze, radiant, consuming, a moment of reckless abandon that left me breathless and alive. But as the storm retreated and the silence settled, a cold shadow crept in, sinking its claws into my chest. Guilt, sharp and relentless, began to gnaw at the edges of my euphoria, whispering truths I'd tried to ignore. I drifted through the next few days in a daze, my hands moving through chores, washing dishes, folding Ava's school uniforms, while my mind replayed every second with Noah. The memory of his lips, tender yet urgent, clashed with the image of James's tired smile, Ava's trusting giggle. How had I let this happen? I'd built my life around them, woven it with love and promises. Yet I'd shattered it all for a fleeting thrill. The veranda lights mocked me from outside, their glow a cruel reminder of where it began, and each night sleep eluded me, my heart a battlefield of desire and remorse. James remained oblivious, buried in his work, his voice a distant hum over dinner. Clients pushing deadlines again, he'd mutter, and I'd nod, my throat tight, my smile a brittle mask. Ava chattered about her day, friends, a science project, and I clung to her words, desperate to anchor myself in the innocence I'd betrayed. But the weight grew heavier, a stone pressing on my chest, until I couldn't breathe beneath it. I had to face it, to mend what I'd broken, even if it meant tearing myself apart. It was a quiet evening, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, when I decided. Ava was tucked in bed, her soft snores drifting down the hall, and James came home late, his shoulders slumped from exhaustion. I'd set the table with care, steaming kumara soup, a loaf of fresh bread, a fragile offering to soften what was coming. My hands trembled as I lit a candle, its flicker casting shadows that danced like my restless thoughts. When he walked in, I summoned every shred of courage, my voice a whisper against the storm within. "James, we need to talk." He paused, surprise flickering in his tired eyes, then sank into a chair. "What's wrong, Sophie?" His tone was gentle, laced with concern, and it twisted the knife deeper. I took a breath, the air sharp and cold in my lungs, and let the words spill, raw, jagged, unstoppable. Something's been off with us for a while. We've drifted, and I've felt lost. I made a terrible mistake, James. I cheated on you. With Noah. My voice cracked, tears burning my eyes, and I saw his face crumple. shock, pain, a wound I'd inflicted. He sat still, processing, his hands clenching the table's edge. The silence was suffocating, a void filled only by the candle's faint hiss. "Why, Sophie?" he finally asked, his voice low, trembling with hurt. "Why him?" I swallowed, the truth a bitter tide rising in my throat. "We grew apart. You were always working and I felt invisible, unwanted. Noah. He was there and I was weak. I'm so sorry, James. I love you and I want to fix this, for us, for Ava." Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and unrelenting, and I braced for his anger, his rejection. But James sighed, a sound heavy with sorrow, and met my gaze. "I failed you too, Sophie. I thought working hard was enough, that it showed I cared. But I left you alone in this. I didn't see you slipping away." His voice broke, and he reached for my hands, his touch tentative yet firm. "You're everything to me. You and Ava. I don't want to lose us." Relief crashed over me, a wave so fierce it nearly drowned me. "I don't want to lose you either," I whispered, squeezing his hands, my fingers trembling against his warmth. "We need to work on this to find our way back. I can't undo what I did, but I'll do anything to make it right." He nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. And we sat there, hands clasped, the candlelight flickering between us. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but a fragile bridge, a promise to try. We agreed to seek help, to sit with a counsellor and untangle the mess we'd made. The decision felt like a lifeline, thin but real, and I clung to it, desperate to reclaim the love I'd nearly thrown away. The next evening, after a quiet dinner, we curled up on the couch, tentative, awkward, but together. The TV murmured in the background, but my focus was on James, his steady breathing, the familiar weight of his arm around me. "Sophie," he said suddenly, his voice soft, "I get why it happened. I forgive you. We both messed up. But I believe we can fix this. I love you, and I want us, Ava, you, me, to be whole again." Tears welled up, but this time they were warm, laced with hope. "I love you too, James," I murmured, burying my face in his shoulder. "Thank you for understanding, for giving us a chance." His arms tightened around me, a quiet strength I'd forgotten, and I felt a spark, not the wild blaze of Noah, but a steady glow, an ember of what we could rebuild. The days that followed were fragile, tender steps toward healing. We talked, really talked, about our fears, our needs, things we'd buried under years of routine. I cut ties with Noah, a painful but necessary severing, his final message a quiet goodbye that stung but freed me. The veranda lights stayed, but their meaning shifted, no longer a tether to betrayal, but a marker of where we'd begun again. James brought home flowers one night, pale lilies, my favourite, and I cried, not from guilt, but from the fragile beauty of his effort. Our love wasn't whole yet, not pristine, but it was ours, scarred, real, worth fighting for. I'd woken from the dream of Noah, faced the wreckage I'd wrought, and chosen this, James, Ava, us. The guilt lingered, a quiet ache, but it was tempered by resolve. I'd faltered, fallen, but now I stood, hands clasped with James, ready to rebuild what mattered most, EA. The confession had cracked us open, spilling raw truths onto the kitchen table, but James's willingness to hold my hands through the wreckage lit a fragile spark of hope. We weren't whole, not yet, but the promise to try shimmered between us, delicate and determined. Whangarei's dawn greeted us the next morning with a gentle mist, the harbour a silver mirror reflecting my resolve. I'd betrayed him, shattered us, yet here we were, choosing to mend what I'd broken. Our first step was tentative, a counsellor's office tucked near the town centre, its walls soft with pastel hues. Sitting across from James, I felt exposed, vulnerable, trembling, my fingers twisting in my lap as we unravelled years of silence. I felt alone, I admitted, my voice a whisper, the words heavy with regret. "You were there, but not really." His eyes, shadowed with pain, met mine, and he nodded, slow and deliberate. "I buried myself in work," he said, his tone rough with self-reproach. "Thought it was for us, but I left you behind." The counsellor's pen scratched softly, a quiet witness to our excavation, and I felt tears sting, hot, cleansing. We laid bare our fears, our neglect, each word a brick pulled from the wall between us. And though it hurt, it was a pain laced with purpose. At home, we carved out time, small, precious slivers, relearning each other. One evening, James set aside his blueprints, his hands hesitant as he pulled me to the couch. "Tell me something," he murmured, his voice a low tide. "Anything you've held back?" I hesitated, then spoke of dreams I'd shelved, painting again, the sea's call, and he listened, truly listened, his gaze steady and warm. It was awkward, this intimacy reborn, but it stirred a quiet thrill, a flicker of the closeness we'd lost. Ava sensed the shift, her chatter brighter as we lingered over breakfast. "Are we okay now?" she asked one morning, her spoon hovering over porridge, her eyes wide with a child's intuition. I smiled, my chest tightening with love. "We're getting there, sweetheart," I said, and James reached for her hand, his touch a silent vow. We started family nights, board games, laughter spilling across the living room, and I felt the threads of us knitting back, fragile but real. One weekend, James suggested a walk along the Hatea River, the water glinting under a pale sun. We strolled, Ava skipping ahead, her giggles mingling with the rustle of totara trees. His hand found mine, warm and firm, and I squeezed back, a current of gratitude surging through me. "I've missed this," he said, his voice thick. "Missed us." I nodded, my throat tight, the river's flow a mirror to the slow healing within. Counselling unearthed more, resentments, small wounds. But we faced them, peeling back layers with raw honesty. "I forgive you, Sophie," James said one night, his arms around me as we stood on the veranda, the lights we'd once hung with Noah now a symbol of our reclaiming. "We'll make it." Tears fell, warm and freeing, and I pressed into him, his heartbeat a steady rhythm against my own. It wasn't seamless, moments of doubt lingered, shadows of Noah's touch, but we pressed forward, hand in hand. We cooked together, danced to old songs in the kitchen, and I felt love stir. Quiet, enduring hours. The guilt softened, a scar rather than a wound, and I knew we were building something stronger, a family forged anew through the ashes of my mistakes. Months had slipped by since James and I chose to stitch our frayed lives back together, each day a quiet triumph, a fragile thread weaving us closer. The storm with Noah had faded into a distant echo, its wild heat replaced by a steadier warmth, a love not perfect, but resilient, blooming anew in the cracks we'd mended. Whangarei's salty breeze carried a promise of renewal, and I felt it in my bones, a lightness I hadn't known in years. One evening, after a long day, James walked through the door, his arms cradling a bouquet of lilies, soft, creamy petals that glowed against the dim light of our kitchen. My breath caught, a flutter of joy sparking in my chest. "Hey, love," he said, his smile tentative yet warm, handing them to me as if they were a fragile offering. The scent enveloped me, sweet and tender, and tears pricked my eyes, not from sorrow, but from the quiet beauty of this moment. "They're gorgeous, James," I whispered, cradling the flowers, my voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you." We sank onto the couch. The house hushed, save for Ava's soft humming upstairs, and I leaned into him, his arm a steady anchor around me. The closeness felt new yet familiar, a rediscovery of something I'd feared lost forever. "Sophie," he murmured, his breath warm against my hair. "I'm so glad we made it through. You and Ava, you're my world. I'll never let us drift again." His words sank deep, a vow etched with sincerity, and I felt my heart swell, tender and full. "I feel the same," I replied, tilting my face to meet his gaze. These months, they've shown me how much I need you, how much this family means. I promise to hold on, always. We lingered there, wrapped in each other's warmth. The silence a balm to wounds we'd healed together. Couch boundaries flickered outside, casting a golden glow through the windows. And I knew this was it. Home, love, a second chance we'd fought for. The next day, we piled into the car, a picnic basket stuffed with sandwiches and Ava's favourite pavlova, and headed to the park near the harbour. It was the same spot where I'd once met Noah, but now it held a different light, a canvas for our new beginning. Ava bounded ahead, her laughter ringing like a bell, chasing gulls across the grass. James spread a blanket under a pohutukawa tree, its red blooms a vibrant crown above us, and we sprawled out, the sun kissing our skin. "Look, Mum," Ava called, holding up a shell she'd plucked from the sand, her eyes bright with wonder. I grinned, pulling her into a hug, her small frame warm against mine. James joined in, tickling her until she squealed, and we collapsed in a heap, breathless with laughter. The harbour sparkled beyond, waves lapping gently, and I caught James's eye, a shared look of contentment, unspoken but deep. As dusk crept in, we huddled together, watching the sky blaze with hues of amber and rose. James's arm tightened around me, his warmth seeping into me, and I nestled closer, my head on his shoulder. "Sophie," he said, his voice low and steady, "you and Ava are everything. I'm grateful every day for this, for us." "I am too," I whispered, my heart brimming with a joy so pure it ached. "We've come so far, and we'll face whatever's next together." The stars began to peek out, tiny beacons in the twilight, and I felt it, a peace, a strength, a love forged through fire. This was our story, messy, broken, beautiful, a family reborn. We'd stumbled, fallen, but risen stronger, hand in hand, ready for whatever lay ahead. Tumaitiwe, please share your own journeys below. What battles have you fought to reclaim love? Your words could light someone's way. Wish you all strength to heal and a love that endures. Thank you for being here. May your horizons shine bright.